don't you come on up here. Everybody, please give Bill Johnson, former senatorial candidate, a hand. Bill has received many awards while serving in the Navy. He has the National Defense Service Medal, the Navy Commendation Medal, the Navy Achievement Medal. And as you all know, Bill gained name recognition with all of us by putting his hat into the Senate race, and I want to formally thank you for that, Bill. I don't have the guts to do it. Thank you.
Batteries are out of that microphone. How many of you here love America? How many of you here love our American flag? I want to tell you a little bit about the American flag because I want every single person in Kentucky to know the story of our flag. Our flag is 50 years old this year, July the 4th. 12:01 p.m. of this year, 2010, that flag turns 50. It is the longest serving of all of our national flags. We've had 27 American flags. The designer of that flag passed away late last year. He's a friend of mine and I miss him dearly. Every time I see a flag, I think about him. His name is Bob Heft. And he was so excited about this year because he wanted to travel around the nation with the original 50-star flag. But I want to briefly tell you a little bit about Bob because I want your kids and grandkids to remember this man. He was in high school 2 years before we had 50 states in 1957. And he decided he wanted to design an American flag. At that point, we had the 48-star flag. Well, he designed a 50-star flag, took it to school as a school project, laid it down in front of his teacher and began to tell the class about it. Amen. Well, his teacher wasn't real impressed. He said, Bob, listen, it has 50 stars. We have 48 states. You're our best student. What are you doing? I said, well, I know that, but I'm anticipating that both Alaska and Hawaii will become states for political balance. At the time, one was heavily Democrat, one was heavily Republican. So I've designed this flag. Well, the teacher looked at it and said, Bob, I'm going to give you a B-. Well, Bob was upset. And back then, you didn't argue with your teachers. The teacher said, listen, son, I'm the teacher, you're the student. If you don't like it, go to Washington and get that flag accepted by Dwight D. Eisenhower. Well, Bob took the challenge. He worked for 2 years. And he had just graduated high school. He had just started a new job as a draftsman. And at the time, you weren't supposed to take personal phone calls at work. They were very disciplined back in 1960. But he got a call in the morning. It was from a congressman who led up the flag selection committee. Flags are always chosen by presidential proclamation, in case you don't know that. Well, this congressman who was part of that selection process called Bob and said, listen, Bob, the President of the United States is going to call you this afternoon. Now, Bob had never talked to a magistrate, city councilman, mayor, or anybody, so he was quite nervous. Well, he went through lunch, got back from lunch, asked this sort of white-haired lady with zero personality, as he described her, if he had received a phone call from the President of the United States while he was at lunch. Well, you can imagine her reaction. No, Bob, you didn't receive that call. Well, late in the afternoon, about 3:20, 3:30, this lady walked out a little bit pale and said, Mr. Heft, you have a personal phone call. I said, well, who is it? It's the President of the United States. He got nervous, and he walked up to the front office, and they took this call, and they piped it throughout the entire factory. So he was particularly nervous. And he picked up the phone, and it was a lady, and she said, is this Robert G. Heft? And he said, well, yes, it is. And he felt relieved. He didn't have to talk to the President today. Stand by for the President. Well, the President comes on and says, this is Robert G. Heft. He says, yes, but you can call me Bob. And he said, yeah, Bob, I want you to come down to Washington on July the 4th because we're going to raise your new flag as our new national banner. And he said, well, I don't know if I can do that. I just started this job. I don't have any vacation time. Mr. President, hold on. Click. Put the President on hold. Well, you can imagine this factory did $30 million of business with the federal government in 1960. That's a lot of money today. You can imagine what that was back then. So the people surrounded him said, Bob, what are you doing? I don't have time off. I can't go to Washington, yada, yada, yada. Well, Bob, listen, we'll figure out something. Get the President back on the phone. So he picks up the phone, and he says, Dwight, are you still there? Well, Dwight was still there. They made arrangements. He went to Washington. Long story short, they raised that flag on July the 4th, 1960 at 12:01 p.m. I was, before Bob passed away, Bob had come to a Lincoln Day dinner. Actually, it was a Christmas dinner in northern Kentucky. Dr. Paul was there and others, and he brought the original 50-star flag with him. And that flag had flown above 131 embassies, all 50 capitals, and it was a flag he designed in 1957. Bob passed away, but I wanted you to know his story. I want to close that story by saying, though, he was concerned about his grade. So after he had sat on the stage with the President, he hustled on home. Because you know what? He wanted to confront Mr. Pratt, who had been teaching for 50 years and ultimately taught for 75 years. He and a whole bunch of media went into this classroom and he confronted his teacher and said, "I got it approved by Dwight D. Eisenhower. Here's the letter." Slid it under Mr. Pratt's face. And Mr. Pratt said, "If it's good enough for the president, it's good enough for me. I hereby change your grade to an A." So why is our country great? Our country is great because of men like Bob Heft. Our country is great because of all you. Our country is great because we're self-reliant. We believe in capitalism. We believe in free markets. Our country is great because we have men and women who have sacrificed throughout the generations to make this country what it is today. And our country is great because we had founding fathers who had the vision and the foresight to create the Constitution of the United States. How many of you here today love the Constitution? How many of you here today think the flag stands for liberty and justice for all? How many here today believe our men and women in the military that have served throughout history are heroes to this country? And how many here today think Ronald Reagan was a really great president? That's right. So what's going wrong? Why are we on the wrong track? You know, I think we're at a make or break point. Are we going to defend the Constitution? Or are we going to destroy it? I say we need to defend it. Are we going to lift up our free way of life? Or cast it down into the socialist pit of oppression? Are we going to become a socialist nation? I don't think so. Not on my watch, not on Dr. Paul's watch, and not on your watch. We will not stand for it. The founding fathers made great sacrifices. If you think for a moment, those men wrote a document condemning their own behaviors in owning slaves, and they still did what was right. They sacrificed their property, they sacrificed their families to write the Constitution. I call it the Owner's Manual for America, and we should carry one everywhere we go. The stated purpose of the Owner's Manual is to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. But the lamp of liberty is being snuffed out by the federal government. The Owner's Manual says the president is commander-in-chief and responsible for protecting our nation. Yet, we have a president who's given away our nuclear sovereignty, who's waving the white flag of retreat and surrender in the face of terrorism. And I just don't think that's right. The Owner's Manual says that the legislature is responsible for the business of our nation, yet we have a Congress that's bankrupting our country and selling off our national sovereignty. The Owner's Manual says we guarantee a Republican form of government to all of the states, yet we have the federal government pillaging the powers of the states. But you know what? There's good news. The good news is the Bill of Rights. We have the individual right to speak out against these domestic attacks. We have the individual right to own guns. We have the right to be secure in our homes. And we have the right to vote new leadership into office. Now, I know for most of us, if we could wake up tomorrow and change Washington into something new, into something American, and into something that once again represents God in our country, we would do it in the blink of an eye. But you know what, sadly, there's this Blame America socialist liberal group that wants to blame America. They think other countries are victims of America. They think somehow we shouldn't be this prosperous and this great. And they want to apologize for our nation. I don't think so. We don't need to apologize for the most compassionate, the most generous nation in the world. We don't need to apologize for a nation that has liberated 40 other countries with the sacrifice of our men and women. We don't need to apologize for a nation that after World War II, when we could have dominated the globe, we didn't even think about it. We lifted those countries up and we set them free. We may not be a perfect nation, but we don't owe any other nation an apology. Now, we have a lot of trouble at the national level, but how many here believe in the 10th Amendment? Well, we need to focus in our state as well. We have an Attorney General by the name of Jack Conway who wants to be your United States Senator but won't join the lawsuits against Obamacare.
Hello,
We have another Lieutenant Governor who wants to be your U.S. Senator, Dan Mongiardo, yet he seems to have ethics problems about his housing allowance. We have a governor who wants to increase the debt of Kentucky by 25% this year alone. It is time to focus on Kentucky and elect new leadership to Frankfort. It might happen, we'll see. Let me get to this speech first. So let's focus on our local races and our state races in addition to our national races.
Oh, man, this is awesome.
You know what? The weapons of choice in this epic battle for our country and our state, there are voices, there are votes. We need to continue to speak loudly about our conservative beliefs. We need to vote for candidates who believe in those conservative beliefs. We need to vote for pro-family candidates who believe marriage is one man and one woman. We need to vote for pro-life candidates who know we need to protect the unborn. We need to vote for candidates who know we have the individual right to own guns. We need to vote for pro-energy candidates who know that fossil fuels, coal, nuclear, oil, natural gas, those are the answers to energy independence. We need to elect candidates who respect our military and know that we're secure and safe and great because of our armed forces. And we need candidates who know that we must balance the budget, pay off the debt, and reduce the size of government. So there's hope. We got to remain optimistic. The answer is simple. Just chart a course back to the Constitution. That's all it'll take. Elect new men and women to office who follow the Constitution. And let's work together as a state, as a community, and as a country to restore Reagan's shining city on the hill. God bless all of you, and God bless our troops. God bless the United States of America. Now I have the privilege of introducing our next speaker.